Hi again, everyone, and welcome to the Restaurant Show podcast. I'm Christopher Wells, your host. I hope you're doing great in this early summer. Hope life is treating you good and that you are, doing good things for your life and moving forward. I'm excited that you're here listening to this, and happy that the weather is finally on the good side. Today, we're going to talk about, some cool stuff to cover. First off, I want to talk to you about how to adapt to your guests, their mood, their rhythm. I had an experience recently that was a bit disappointing, and I want to tell you about that and how it could have easily been avoided. I will also talk about some of the things that you need to be aware of for your website, as far as which pages are the most looked at and where some of your focus should be. And sometimes that's information I realize that some restaurant owners are not aware of. So if I can help you in any way with that, I will give you a bit of info on that. Then we'll have the RBB mention of the week for a special restaurant that did something special for their guests. Sometimes to give you some ideas of what could be fun to do with some people. And then we'll have a do, something you want to do in your restaurant, and a big don't, something you don't want to do. So stick around. We'll get the show on the road. Okay, so our first item of business today, I want to tell you about a recent experience I had in a restaurant. A couple of months back for my birthday, went out with 7 of my dearest friends, and I had picked the restaurant because they, a bunch of wine lovers. I wanted to experience different things, and I wanted to go somewhere where I knew they had enough selection on their wine list that I could have some stuff that I was interested in having. I don't want your run of the mill regular wine list. I wanted to experience different regions in France, and I had some specific stuff in mind I wanted to try. So we went out, and it was a packed restaurant. We made a bit of a later reservation to make sure that I knew we'd be probably kind of demanding, wanting to try different wines, and wine service can take a little longer. So we made a bit of a later reservation, and they were very nice. Nothing wrong as far as how we were greeted, or the service itself was nice. And but the only problem is that they couldn't keep up with us, and not in a bad way, not in a demanding way, but basically I wanted to change wines every time, and I didn't ask her to change the glasses because there's 8 people, right? If I'm going to have 10 bottles of wine, that's 80 glasses. I'm not demanding you to change. We asked them to change glassware when we went to red, so we had 3 or 4 bottles of white, and eventually switched it over. Now, keep in mind, I'm not driving. No one's driving. We made arrangements not to drive because we knew we were going out to do something like a wine tasting, pretty much. Pretty knowledgeable people around the table as far as wines, so we wanted to pair different wines with different meals, and wanted to try different varietals and regions, and we're all very excited about it. In the end, we wound up drinking 7 bottles of wine between 8 people, which may seem like a lot for some people, but in my mind, with the wine connoisseurs that were there and what we had in mind, and the duration of the meal, I was thinking that we'd try 10, 12 different wines, and that was my goal. And because there was, we knew what we wanted to taste. The problem was they never adapted to our mood and our rhythm. So I think it's really important, and now I'm talking about wine in a finer dining establishment, but whether you're just a diner or any type of restaurant, you need to adapt to your guest's mood and rhythm. You need to feel why they're there, where they're going. You can ask them that too, and you can make sure that you're fine-tuning the experience to what it is that they want. In that night, in that restaurant, they decided that table of 8 would be treated just like a two-top, like a deuce that just came in for a bite and wanted to leave and go home. They didn't adapt to what we wanted. Made the reservation in advance. I'd never make reservations, but I made one that night because we wanted a certain experience. It got to a point where basically by the time I was tasting a wine, and think about it, a bottle of wine between 8 people, I need to we need to move on to the next wine rather quickly. Or, normally a bottle of wine will serve 4 or 5 glasses. So if we're doing 8 people, we're all pretty much getting a taster, and we want to move on to the next one. So what I started doing when I saw that, basically she'd pour the wine, walk away, and then come back 5-10 minutes later. Obviously, all our glasses are empty at that point. And then we tried to order the next bottle of wine. So what I started doing is once I'd have tasted the wine and she would pour, I would order the next one and ask her to make me taste it and leave it on the table. So we'd be ready to move forward, which even was very hard, apparently, for some reason. So service was good. The food was good. But in the end, they probably lost $200-300 in sales because we probably would have drank another 3-4 bottles of wine. And now I've been going there for years. They have a late night menu. When I was working late shifts, still in the restaurant industry, I would go there on a quite frequent basis. And now I don't really want to go back because, there's nothing I could complain about. Service was good. The food was good. But I went there for a specific experience and was really cool about it and pretty clear about what I wanted. And the server would not budge on how she was going to operate. So obviously, I think $200-300 is probably the equivalent of at least 1 or 2 tables extra that they could have served on the same table. And keep in mind, most people won't complain for stuff like that because there's nothing to complain about. How you want me to go and say, well, you can keep up with the wine, but is the food good? Yes. Is the server polite and efficient? Yes. So sometimes it's as weird as not adapting to a guest's mood or rhythm. Same thing if you had a table they came in and told you, we want to do this as quick as possible because we're going to see a play or going to see a movie or we have to go somewhere. Well, you need to adapt to that. Obviously, there's limits to how fast you can prepare the food. But if you're just nonchalant about it and you make him wait for the bill and you make him wait for payment, right? You control as a server or as a manager that part of the experience. You can't control how quickly a steak will cook, but you can control how the other aspects of it will be, and you can help accelerate that experience for them. Well, in our case, we just wanted to experience more wines and take our time. And food was served rather quickly. We got our appetizers. As soon as that was clear, we were on the main course. So I understand that it's a busy restaurant on a Saturday night, and it's not but it probably could have easily been, the experience could have been made a little bit better. So just keep in mind that, they're a restaurant that have been established for many, many years. And their biggest competitor recently closed down because business hasn't been the same the last couple of years. And a lot of restaurants have opened. And I have a feeling that other restaurant probably had that same attitude of, we've been around forever. This is how we do it. You adapt and you enjoy, what we give you. Instead of saying we could easily adapt a little bit differently to certain guests, certain groups, I rarely go out with a group, right? I prefer going out with a few people. That's the kind of experience I enjoy more. But that night we were a bunch of us and they kind of dropped the ball on that. So make sure that you are aware of what your guests want and ask them, are you in a rush? Do you want to take your time? Would you prefer to drink more wine before we put the order in, right? Like, you can make sure that you're on the same page with them, and that will make for a more enjoyable experience for everyone and probably make people want to come back that much more. So make sure that we adapt to their desired experience and not impose it, not impose our desired outcome on them. So on to the second part of the podcast today. I want to talk to you about your restaurant's website. Now, a lot of restaurants have moved away even from full-on websites to focus on their Facebook page or social media in general. But a lot of restaurants still use websites, and I think they definitely have strong value, where on other sites, Facebook or whether it be an Urban Spoon or whatever, you tend to get lost through the other restaurants. But to have your own unique image online is I think it's a very positive thing. Now, what I want to tell you about is that I know a lot of people focus on their menus, which is very important because a lot of people want to see what kind of food you're doing, what your price point is. Some people don't put prices online. I believe that you want to give them an idea of where you are situated, so that they can decide then if that's what you don't want to basically bring them in on the false notion that you're rather inexpensive, and then they show up and it's twice what they thought they would pay, because that's not creating a good relationship with them and a good experience. So anytime you have to be, deceitful with people, I would suggest strongly to go against that, even though some people seem to think it's a good business model. For example, when you go to a restaurant and the prices are not on the cocktail list because it's either, a tourist place and they figure people will have to order them anyways, and then they wind up spending $15 on a cocktail. So I think being clear and focused and having prices on your menu online is very important. But one thing that sometimes people are not aware of is what is the most viewed page on a website. Now, I've worked with a company for a couple of years when I started Restaurant Building Blocks, my own business, and they would provide specifically for restaurants websites, online reservations, gift certificates. So working with them, I had a chance to analyze over a 2 year period between 100 and 200 of the restaurant's analytics, page views, their Google Analytics, where the traffic came from, what people looked at, and across the board, I mean, 100% of restaurants' data I looked at, the most viewed page were the picture gallery. Now, what that tells you is that people above and beyond menus and price point, what they want to know is what the atmosphere is like. Is that what I'm in the mood for? It doesn't mean that it needs to be super high end or super spiffy. What it means is if I'm in the mood for a sports bar and you look like a fine dining, I want to see, I want to make an idea for myself through the pictures. If I want to go out for a drink with friends and a glass of wine and I look at your pictures, it doesn't look like there's a bar and it looks like it's an older crowd or it's, a more relaxed atmosphere. Maybe it's not the restaurant I want. So people are looking at pictures to make a decision of, does this fit the mood that I'm in and the experience I'm looking for? So if we know that information, then we know that if the pictures that are on your website are taken with a cheap camera or your smartphone and it's badly lit and it's not appealing, well, think about it, right? They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. If your picture, is not very tempting or appealing, then definitely people will make a decision whether they visit you or not based on that information. So I think as you move forward and either you and the same quality would be recommended for anything you use on social media. If you're taking a picture of food underneath your pass-through and it's dark and it looks like crap, then it's not very appealing, right? If it's sitting on your bar on a table with a nice glass of wine or a beer or a drink next to it, or on your patio with a view of your patio, that's more appealing. So keep in mind that you want to, at least for your regular stuff on your website, maybe invest a little bit of money in having, a professional photographer take some quality pictures of your dining room, of your bar, of your establishment, because people make, from everything I've analyzed anyways, make their decisions on visiting you based on the pictures that are on your website. Or at least it'll have a big impact on whether they decide to go or not. Maybe they will also look at the menu. Usually the menu is the second most looked at page on websites. From the data I've gathered, but that's from a couple hundred restaurants over a couple of years. Menus will be looked at, but not as much as pictures. So also, if you have no pictures on your on the front page, on the home page, maybe that would be a good place to have a really good picture that really gives us an idea of what your restaurant is. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if you're fast food. It doesn't matter if you're a diner. It doesn't matter if you're a wine bar. But I want to have an idea when I hit your website of what kind of restaurant you're at, and am I buying, and am I, desiring to visit you, because that's what I'm in the mood for. So think of the pictures, the menus. Like I said, I suggest putting prices on there. Make sure that your contact page is up to date. There's nothing like visiting a website trying to find a map and there's no map, or at least an address, or at least a phone number to phone you. A lot of websites just have like an online contact form. I want to call to see if I need to make a reservation or visit you, right? You want to make yourself as available as possible to be reached. Now, another thing that's interesting is mobile access to your website. A lot of people have invested in it. A lot of people think they don't have to. Well, I can tell you from the data I've seen for, like like I said, for a couple hundred websites, I can tell you that in 2012, the 24% of visits to the websites globally, 24% were done through mobile. And if you go back to even early in 2012, it was just under 20%. Now, if you look globally for 2013, that number went up to 33%. And I would be curious to analyze a bunch of them now, because I would think it's probably hitting around 40. But I can tell you from the data I've seen, 33% of visits to restaurant websites in 2013 were done through mobile. So that means that somebody that's walking down the street, that's somebody that's in a car, that's somebody that's not at home in front of their computer, that's somebody that has a smartphone in their hand and they're Googling for restaurants, or they're going through whatever site, they gain access to find a restaurant, and they're going through your website. Now, if some restaurants are on Flash or something like that, then nothing will even appear. And if they are not adapted for mobile, then you get very hard to read, very hard to navigate a regular web page on mobile. So if you're going around trying to find a place to go and you have to fight so hard to find information, you might just go to the next website until you find information that you can easily gather. So if your website is not mobile friendly, I think in this day and age, it's something that you should look at. There's usually some very affordable options to have a mobile website created, and I think that's something. Imagine if it's gone up from 24% to 33, 35, almost 40% this year. I think we're definitely hitting 50% of visits done through mobile. A lot of people are just using their smartphones now, unless they are at home and opening up the iPad or the or their laptop or computer or whatever. But I think that number is going to keep going up, and you're probably losing business, or people are probably just skipping to the next website that they can actually look at, read, get some information on, because they use websites to make decisions on where they're going to visit. And if they can't have that information, then they're probably just going to move. And the thing is, because it's so easy to find more information on other restaurants, they might just decide to skip you altogether and move to the next one. So make sure that you have quality pictures on your website, because people base their decisions a lot on what they see and if they're buying the atmosphere and if that's the place they want to go. And make sure that your website is mobile friendly. And now it's time for this week's our BB mention of the week. And this week I would like to mention a restaurant called the Shore Club in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. They did something I was quite impressed with. They have a sister restaurant in town, and they have a regular guest that actually frequents both restaurants, and maybe the sister restaurant a little bit more than theirs. But he's known in both establishments, and managements are aware of him, and has been a regular for years. Now he had to visit them for a meeting, but he was a big fan of a dessert that the sister restaurant sold. So he was kind of disappointed that he couldn't have his favorite dessert. So management took it upon themselves to send someone over to the other restaurant and pick up, called in advance and picked up a portion of said dessert, brought it back to their restaurant, and surprised them with it at dessert. Now, do I need to tell you how impressed and happy he was that they went definitely out of their way to find his favorite dessert, to bring it in, and to make sure that his experience was above and beyond what he could have hoped for. Now, he was a regular already to both restaurants. They could have just taken that for granted, but somebody had enough sense to realize that showing by doing something rather simple. Both restaurants are not even 5 minutes apart, but taking obviously 20, 30 minutes to go out of your way to make somebody really happy, and to actually, I guess he had mentioned that you couldn't have his favorite dessert from the other restaurant. So going out of your way to prove and to show that you care and that you want to make them happy and that you appreciate the money they spend with you, goes to just reinforce the relationship you have with that person, with that guest. And I can only imagine how many people he shared that story with. And that's the thing. You don't do it for that, but the impact that it has, we always say that people, who have a complaint to make will tell, 50 of their friends. Now, when we do great things like that and impress people and kind of destabilize them because they're not expecting us to do something that's special for them, or that we are going to go out of our way, because that's not something very common, right? To go to another restaurant to pick up dessert, to make sure that somebody has a great experience in yours. So I thought it would be great to mention what the Shore Club Ottawa did for that special guest. And I can only imagine that he is even more rooted into visiting them and being a guest in their establishment. So congrats to them. And speaking of restaurants that are doing great things, there's a restaurant close to near my house that I frequently talk about in the trainings that I give, because they do it really well. And by do it really well, I want to talk about the restaurant game. They provide a great experience in a diner in an average restaurant. Now, I'm not saying no diners ever provide a good experience, but what I mean is that people's perception sometimes is they will give the level of service for the level of food or perception of what they are. So I tell a lot of my clients, you don't have to be a 5-star restaurant to give 5-star service. Imagine if you're a 3-star restaurant, you're a diner, you do some nice burgers or some nice dishes, but you provide 5-star service in that place. People feel like they have added value, like they get more for their money, and because most restaurants in that range will not go above and beyond. Now, this little restaurant is about. I live in the country. I'm lucky enough to live on a mountain in a beautiful area called Wakefield, Quebec. And this restaurant's about 15, 20 minutes, actually even 20, 25 minutes from my house. So it's quite a drive for me to get there. I visited for breakfast. I've actually never gone at night, but the experience is always consistent. I go maybe 4, 5, 6 times a year. I've been doing that for 3, 4, 5 years now. 3, 4, probably 4 or 5. Um, they provide quality food at a great price. I can get a big breakfast for under $10, and it's served with friendly and efficient service. I keep going back. I know of people who drive 30 to 40 minutes to go to that place because from where we live to go to town, to the biggest town around to go to, an overpriced breakfast place is pretty much the same drive. And a lot of people from town will drive up in the country to go visit that restaurant. Now, when I say they do the restaurant game right, is because they offer a great experience all around every time. They don't pretend to be fine dining. They don't pretend to be what they're not. They are a diner on the side of a main road in the country. And every time I go, I don't even know if I've been served by the same server twice. I probably have been, but the server is always on the ball, always present, always acknowledges you when you walk in, always hits the table within a minute or two and I go for breakfast in that case to offer me coffee. Um, I went with some people that had never been a few days ago and they weren't ready to order and it was not a problem. I'll be back. Sometimes you go to a smaller place, people will be like, hey, I'm ready to take your order now and, give you attitude. No, there's no rush on the food. You take your time to order. The service is always fast from the kitchen to the service. They're, the all around great experience. I always tell people it's how you feel about the money you spent, right? It's not how much it costs, but how you feel about it when you leave. Whether you spent $10 or $1,000, if you leave saying that was worth that amount of money, you will go back. Think about it. If you go somewhere and you're like, oh, I don't know if that was worth that $40. Damn, service was this or food was that. Then you're not satisfied. That emotional connection you have to that restaurant is negative. If you spend $10 somewhere and you're like, man, I could have spent twice that amount, it would have been worth it, which is how I feel when I visit that restaurant, then you've done your job as a restaurateur, as a server, as a manager. Give people value for the money they spend, right? A dollar is a dollar spent anywhere. And that's one thing I repeat to all my clients all the time. Sometimes they tell me, "Well, I'm in a little village and I don't have as much money as a large chain." Well, a dollar is worth a dollar at McDonald's, like it's worth a dollar in your fast food joint in a little village somewhere. So you can't say I'm in this area. I'll give less service or less value, right? People have to have similar value for the money that they spend, and you need to really think about that. If I can get an experience like that in a large chain or a large restaurant, I need to be able to get a similar experience in yours because my money is worth the same and I have to work as hard and I have to pay as much taxes on it as I would if I spent it in that other restaurant. So big congrats to that restaurant for creating that kind of experience and being on the ball every time I visited them, and not over a few months, but over many years. And that's how you win the restaurant game, is by being consistent and offering that experience over time. And now for a big don't, I want to tell you a little story about another restaurant that is near my house that I visited recently and that did not do so well. And it could have easily been different, could have easily have a different outcome. I had some friends from out of town, and it was one of the first really nice, beautiful day to visit a patio. Now, this restaurant has a gorgeous patio with a gorgeous view, and obviously is very popular. So we showed up around 11:30 in the morning to what was already a very busy restaurant, and made our way to the sign that said, please wait to be seated. And a very friendly server, waved and acknowledged us and said, we'll be right with you in a minute. And grabbed some menus, grabbed the hostess, and told her, would you seat these nice gentlemen? The hostess that walked away went to see another server to ask them about, I guess, where we could be seated. Now, the patio had about 4 or 5 tables that were empty. Um, One of those in the filled up section, and about 3 or 4 in a section that seemed to be closed off. But in the closed off section, some tables were already sat, so I could tell that they got slammed and expected to wait a little bit. And I was on a day off with a friend, so I didn't really have a problem waiting. So after the hostess had a quick chat with a server, she came back and she said, I don't have any room outside, but I could sit you inside. Now, keep in mind, I live in a rather cold part of North America, being Quebec, and I've been stuck inside all winter. It's the first beautiful day and the patio is open. We all want to be outside. Now, in that restaurant right now, I had 60 people sitting outside and nobody sitting inside because everybody just wanted to be outside. So she told me I don't have any room outside, but I could definitely sit you inside. Is that okay? And I said, well, actually, it's not. I really want to eat outside. So are you telling me that you can't seat me? So she said, yeah, I can't seat you right now, unfortunately. So I said, you want me, I should go pretty much. And she said, well, yeah, well, you could come back later. And I said, okay, I guess I could come back later. So I thanked her and made my way out through the restaurant as other people were walking in, and went to buy food at a little pastry shop close by, and got into my car to drive home and figured I would come and have the food outside at my house. Now, the unfortunate thing is if they'd stood by the fact that they were too busy, I guess because they'd sat too many tables, and kept that answer with everyone, it would have been fine. But when we drove away, they had maybe 5-10 minutes after I left, I drove in front and they'd sat 4 more tables that were empty while I was standing there, and she told me she couldn't seat me. I figured these people probably insisted more than I did and said, well, that table's free. Can I just sit there, please? I wasn't going to do that and impose myself. And I guess because I wasn't aggressive enough, she just decided that, it was easier to let me go at that point. But she went and sat 8 more people in that patio within the next 5-10 minutes before I left. So I can only tell you how I felt and how I felt appreciated as a guest. And definitely made me feel like they didn't give a crap about me. My money was not good enough for them. And I guess because I wasn't an aggressive person who was going to be pushy and say, give me a table, I guess I was not welcomed in that restaurant. So it would have been very easy to say, we're very busy. I can seat you. It might take longer than usual. The kitchen obviously just got hit with all these tables, right? We just opened up. It's 11:30. It's very busy. But if you are not in a rush, we can definitely have a drink. And I would have been very comfortable with that. And it would have been my decision at that point to say, you know what, I'm not willing to wait. She assumed that it was too much and my experience wasn't going to be what I wanted, instead of clarifying it with me, right? And it's a redundant thing today to talk about people's perception, their mood, what they're willing to do or not. Ask a question. Be straightforward with information. She'd probably been told, you don't sit this section. Well, at that point, when people have been insistent and decided to seat themselves in that section, you can't tell the other guests they can't, right? You need to tell them it'll be a while and you're super busy and you're busier than you expected and maybe you're underprepared, but you make the guests make the decision. Don't tell them they should just basically go away because you're too busy. So again, communication in any relationship in life is important, but the same with your guests. Make sure that you're clear and that they know what to expect and they won't get angry. If you tell them we're very busy right now, we're looking at an hour wait, I don't care how long it is. Tell them you're going to sit and it might take an hour before the food comes, then it's their decision. But just to say I can't seat you when you're seating other people that are more aggressive is not looking very good on how you care about their patronage. So keep that in mind. So thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Restaurant Show podcast. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have any comments or questions or anything I can help you with, don't hesitate to write at info@rbbsolutions.com. I would love to get your feedback. And if there's anything I can help you with, you can visit my website at www.restaurantbuildingblocks.com. And you can check out some of the stuff I do on there. And you can even get in touch with me. I hope you're well. Have a great week. And I will see you next time.